Before we get this episode started, did you know that this show is part of a larger podcast network called Access More? Access More is an entire library of faith-based content from some of today's most inspiring faith leaders and speakers. Imagine a place where you can dive deep into meaningful, real, and vulnerable topics, all centered around faith. That's what Access More offers. The best part, Access More is a listener-funded nonprofit platform. This means that you can be a part of making sure these genuine and sometimes vulnerable conversations reach the hearts of millions. If you're interested in joining that mission, you can donate today at accessmore.com/donate. And as an added bonus for giving today, you'll be eligible to win a major tech upgrade. The perfect prize to help you enjoy the entire library of shows at Access More. All thanks to friends of Access More who want to inspire others to give their best gift today. You're so needed to help continue important conversations about faith and life on Access More. So let's do this together at accessmore.com and click donate. And hey, even if you're not in a place to donate, we'd still love your prayers. And for you to discover all that's available at accessmore.com.
There's kind of this idea that the best thing for my kids is to be around me 100% of the time.
That is a lie.
What in the world makes me think that them being home with me while I'm trying to write emails and field phone calls and make sure they're okay, what makes me think that that's actually a better scenario for them?
Hey everyone, and welcome to the Christy Wright Show, where faith meets personal development so you can have a bigger faith and a better life. I'm so excited because today we are talking about seasons, and I get to sit down with my good friend and author and podcaster and speaker, Stephanie Mae Wilson, and we're going to talk about how she has adapted to her new season of having twins. But first, let's talk about why seasons even matters. In our lives, we obviously have the calendar seasons, right? Like you have the winter, the spring, the summer, and the fall. If you have children, school-age children, you probably have the seasonality of the school year. You've got a fall semester and a spring semester and probably a summer break. So we naturally have seasons in our lives that our life works around, whether it's the calendar, how we manage our time, what our priorities are. But I think a lot of times we miss the other types of seasons that we might experience. Now, I would define a season by anything that takes up a lot of your time or energy, a lot of your time or your attention. So think about all the things that could be a part of your season that don't necessarily come from the calendar year, the seasonality of the weather, or even your school calendar. Something like your health. You might be in a season of training for a marathon. You might be in a season of recovering from surgery, a season of healing. There's all different types of seasons you could go through when you look at it through the lens of your health. You could also look at seasons in a different way. The theme of a season being determined by maybe something God is taking you through. I'll tell you, I have gone through wilderness seasons before, and I've talked about this before even on the show, where it seems like for some reason I can't explain, and truly even today, in hindsight, I still can't explain, that God will take me through a season of just difficulty, wilderness, a season of humiliation, a season of disappointment, where it feels like the hits just keep on coming. There have been other seasons God has taken me through where there's a theme of something else, a theme of hard work, a theme of rest, a theme of preparation for something that I can't really explain. So there's also another lens we could look at our life through, the lens of what God is taking us through and how that can define a season. We certainly can go through seasons with our kids where the season of having a newborn is very different than the season of having a 2-year-old, and the season of a 2-year-old is very different than a 7-year-old or a 17-year-old. So when we begin to understand all the different things that affect the season that we're in, it helps us understand what we should expect of this season. Because I'll tell you, one of the things that I have seen so often, and one of the things that I have certainly been guilty of myself, is not considering the season you're in when you set expectations for yourself. So when I had my first son, Carter, I expected I would do all the things that I did before I had kids, and I couldn't, and I felt like a failure. Or when I'm in a really busy season at work, I expect that I'm still going to work out all the time and have a clean house and have all this quality time with my kids, but I don't because it's a really heavy work season. See, when we don't consider the season that we're in, when we think about our life and make our plans and even evaluate ourselves, which we do all day, every day, by the way, how we're doing, whether we're failing or whether we're succeeding. When we don't consider the season, we are missing a major variable, maybe the most important variable that affects what that season looks like. So I want you to think about this for your life. How would you define the season that you're in? How would you define it? You can first look at it from a practical perspective of like work. This is a busy season at work or a slow season at work. I'm off work because I'm on maternity leave. It's a season where I'm going back to work and it's new. It's a season of a big project. I'll tell you, for me, you can probably guess, I'm in a busy season of work. I'm launching my new book, Take Back Your Time, The Guilt-Free Guide to Life Balance. I'm on the road. I'm speaking all the time. I'm traveling. I'm doing podcast interviews. I'm doing media interviews. It's a busy season at work. So think about it through the lens of your work. Maybe you can look at your season through the lens of your kids. What season are you in? Last 6 months or so, I've been in a season really focusing on getting my kids to swim, and it has paid off because they are swimming great. But you might be going through a different season, a season where one of your kids is struggling in school. Maybe you're going through a season where your child is at a new school and they're nervous and they're trying to make friends and build confidence, and you're meeting new moms and new parents. Maybe you're going through a season where one of your kids is excelling and they're awesome and they're behaving so great and they've hit a new stride and you guys are closer than ever. What kind of season are you in with your kids? You can look at it through the lens of your marriage. How are you and your spouse doing if you're married? When you look at your life through these different lenses of the major relationships, the major responsibilities that you have that take up a lot of your time and a lot of your energy, it helps you have a more accurate and hopefully grace-filled perspective on your life and what this season should look like. It helps you set goals that are appropriate for this season. It helps you have expectations that are appropriate and realistic for this season. You know, I was on a coaching call recently and a woman asked me, I'm about to have a baby soon. How do I not get overwhelmed? And I thought the very nature of that question lets me know that she's going to be disappointed because you are overwhelmed when you have a newborn. You're overwhelmed when you're tired. That's a part of that season. Now, this is not to be Debbie Downer and say like, oh, just expect the worst and then hopefully you'll be surprised, pleasantly surprised. But when you understand the season you're in, when you consider the season you're in, when you acknowledge the season you're in, it gives you the wisdom and the grace to adapt to it. It gives you the wisdom and discernment of what you need to do, what is realistic and practical for you in this season to adapt to the season, but it also gives you the grace for yourself that you need in this season. Take the pressure off, lower the bar, think about your life differently with a different level of gratitude and pride at all the things you're doing right, because this is the season you're in. So what season are you in? What's going on in your life? What's going on in your work? What's going on in your kids, your health, your marriage, anything that takes up the majority of your time and mental energy and your emotions? How would you define the season that you're in? I want to challenge you to actually take a journal, a piece of paper, maybe on your phone and your notes app, and write it down. Spend a few minutes describing and defining the season that you find yourself in right now. And it can be a few weeks, it could be a few months, it doesn't matter. But what are the themes of this season? And as you do that, it will help you make decisions for how to spend your time in this season. All right, y'all, I'm so excited because I get to sit down with a very good friend, Stephanie Mae Wilson, who's a podcaster, multiple-time author, and mom of twins. New twin babies.
Yes.
Welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. I'm so glad to be here. It feels weird to not have them like
I know.
hanging on my
You're
hip.
hands-free right now.
I'm hands-free, yeah.
This is amazing.
I'm clean.
You really look amazing for having twins 5 minutes ago.
Thank you. I'm not currently covered in spit up, but that's like normally my life. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah,
Like
so
we just have to soak it in while you've got it, and then you will go back home to it.
Yes. I'm just going to like lean back and relax a little bit.
Take a little nap after this.
Yes, I will. Yeah, no judgment.
Get some sleep. Stephanie, I'm so glad you're here. And we have been on this theme lately, talking about balance, because my book, Take Back Your Time, comes out in September, and really love digging into this topic of balance and what that means to different people, what it looks like in different seasons. And one of the things that can throw your world so out of whack and take up a lot of time, by the way, is kids, and specifically having babies in that season. And, you know, when you're a new mom, when you go from not having children to having your first child, or in your case, two at the same time, what has the last 8 months been like?
Wild.
Yeah.
Like truly wild. I think, you know, my husband and I always say the first 3 months were really hard.
Yeah.
Like really hard. Harder
than you expected? Because you expected it to be hard, I'm sure.
Yeah. Everyone says it's hard, but I think you just don't know what that means. And my friends have had kids, like I've watched them go through it. It's just, you can't feel it until you're feeling it.
Yeah.
And really, I mean, the hardest thing was definitely sleep deprivation. And also the other thing is like, they just hand you these babies after so I had a C-section. So you have surgery and then they hand you these babies and you're in charge of them. And like, there are handbooks and manuals and classes and stuff, and I took all of them and read all of them, but it's like, you're supposed to know what to do with these babies, and then you're supposed to know what to do with them on zero sleep. We should rework that a little bit.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it was totally wild. I've never been so tired in my life. It is definitely the hardest thing I've ever done, ever, hands down, the first 3 months. We started to kind of slowly come out of it. The thing that's been really helpful the whole time is that we've had a lot of help. And that was what was really interesting about, you know, when they were born was a really interesting time because they were born at the height of COVID. And so because of that, we had more help than we expected, but also not other help. Like we had to have different conversations about like bringing in, you know, do we have a babysitter? And like what, you know, exposure became this whole thing. Like, you know, what's everyone's exposure and how do we keep ourselves and the kids safe? But then also because our families were living in this kind of shut down COVID world, they were able to come be with us. And that was really wonderful. So we had families staying with us for weeks and weeks and weeks on end, which was wonderful. So that helped a lot through the like sleeplessness, and they helped us get a lot more sleep than we really would have. But I think like when it comes to life balance, we had a big switch right around 3 months or 2.5 months, because that's when kind of everyone went home. And it was before we were able to really figure out what our day-to-day kind of help looked like. And that was also the time that we were kind of trying to go back to work. And so that was a whole new, it definitely was not as hard as the beginning because the girls are starting to sleep a little bit better. But we were trying to figure out like, how do we be our normal selves? Like how do we re-enter normal life or get an ounce of work done? And it was really, it was really challenging.
Yeah. Well, I love the honesty of that because I think we set ourselves up to fail when we enter a new season, whether that's a new season at work or a crazy season like bringing home twins. Like, you had no kids and now you have 2 kids. We set ourselves up to fail when we expect that it's going to be easy, effortless, that we're just going to do it perfectly, that we're going to do all the things we did before. You know, I was actually on a coaching call this week, Stephanie, and this woman asked me, she was like, we were doing Q&A. And she said, you know, I'm going to have a baby, my first child in a month. How do I not get overwhelmed and still do all the things I want to do? And I was like, girl, you don't. Just prepare your heart. Because when we have this idea in our head that it's going to be easier, we're going to hold ourselves to the standard we had before that thing happened, that thing being something wonderful, like children, or that thing, something terrible, like something bad at work, you lose a job, you know, a family member's going through a health crisis. When we have this expectation that it's going to be balanced and easy, and I'm going to have this Zen state, like that's unrealistic and it sets us up to fail. And so I love the honesty in the last, 8 months. How have you adapted or given yourself the grace to adapt, given yourself permission to change your mind, change your plans, change your expectations of yourself? Because I think one of the things I see a lot of, Stephanie, and I'm guilty of this, is especially women do this. We don't give ourselves permission to change our mind. So then we feel like we're failing because our house isn't as clean as we thought. We're not working out as much as we thought, whatever the thing is. And there's such wisdom and peace in adapting and changing your mind and giving yourself grace to change your expectations of yourself. How have you done that? Because I'm sure you've had to over the last 8 months.
Yeah. There are so many messages that we hear as women about motherhood that and I don't even feel like I was really inundated in them. Like I didn't read parenting books before I had kids. I didn't have my nursery pin board all set up. That wasn't what I spent a lot of time dreaming about before I had kids. And I don't even think I was exposed to as many of the messages as some of us are. But still, when the girls were born, I realized that there were things that I thought I should be feeling or doing that I wasn't necessarily. I kind of thought that I should be feeling this crushing love for them every single moment of every day. And first of all, I was just getting to know them. They were strangers that someone handed to me. And I'd kind of gotten to know them, but I was just getting to know them. And that was kind of a weird thing to adjust my expectations. These are new people to me. And so sometimes I was, feeling crushing love for them. Sometimes I was feeling crushing fatigue and nothing else. But one of the other things was, when we were starting to get into more of a new normal and we were able to kind of figure out what our week looks like. Because I work full-time, my husband works full-time. And so we've had to figure out who's going to be with these sweet babies during the day. And I realized in that process of bringing people into our lives to help us, that I had this perception that I needed to have as little help as I could get away with.
Because I think a lot of us have that. If I can do it myself, I should do it myself. It's where did we get that story?
I should have the minimum amount of help to cover the absolute necessities, but I should still be barely sleeping. I should not have any time for myself. I should be unshowered because it's selfish if I have enough help that I could actually take a shower or take a nap or something like that. And so, it was a weird thing bringing on other people to help us with our kids, but it's been really cool to kind of unpack that. It's been hard to unpack that, but it's been cool to unpack that and just realize that a lot of really wonderful things come from having other people in our kids' lives.
Yes.
And before we were able to have, a babysitter or a nanny, there was one time, so Carl and I were trying to work at home and we were both trying to work full-time and we had these babies who were very much a two-person full-time job, each.
For sure.
And he was doing a consulting call and I had to just man the babies for an hour by myself. And something about that hour, they both decided to just lose their minds. And the thing about two infants is you can't really pick them up at the same time.
Right.
And so I was trying to calm them down. I was trying to console them. I was trying to kind of keep them quiet because he's on this call downstairs. Sure. And so I laid them on the floor and I'm sort of crouched on top of them.
Yes.
Plugging in
I can visualize this.
Just trying to shush them. But yeah, I'm trying to hold them by being above them. And so by the time Carl came in after his call, it was truly an hour.
Sure.
I'm crying, they're crying. Sure. It was a total mess. And the thing that I've gotten to see though through inviting more help into our lives is that the girls' day-to-day isn't like that now. Right. Because they have people who have fresh energy for for them. And people they get to be with their grandparents, which is an incredible relationship for them to get to experience. And they haven't been with the girls all the time. So they have this fresh energy and ideas and want to play and aren't trying to be on a consulting call while the girls are trying to play. And so it's been really humbling in a way, but also really good for me to sort of unpack some of these, ideas about motherhood that I don't know where I got them.
Right.
But it's been really cool to realize that by inviting other people into our family and our life and having other people around for the girls, they get the best of a lot of different worlds, including the best of us.
Right. Oh, I love that. And there's such wisdom in that. And I love that even as you unpack that, because I think there is something that when you become a mom or parent, guilt enters the picture. And I don't know where it comes from, but it's about everything. It's about how much you sleep, how much help you have, where you send them to school, what your childcare plan is. There's guilt. If you stay home, if you work out, if you stay home, you feel guilty. If you send them to daycare, you feel guilty. If you have a nanny, you feel guilty. Everybody's just feeling guilty. Where did we get this story? And it's interesting because, Stephanie, I think this is the topic of guilt is something I have tried really hard to dig into because I don't believe guilt is from God at all. Like conviction, like Christy, you did something you shouldn't.
Yeah,
totally different thing. Correcting me. But this nagging guilt that I'm always failing, like that's not how my Heavenly Father talks to me or you or anyone watching and listening. And so I love how if we dig into this, and that's the reason the tagline of my book is the guilt-free guide to life balance, because this is the issue behind the issue. It's actually not a time issue. It's not a parenting issue. It's not a work-life balance issue. It's actually, there's such guilt wrapped up in how we spend our time. And I want to set women free at that level, which by the way, will fix the calendar.
Yeah.
And so but it's not a switch that you flip. So like, this is real time for me. Yesterday was my birthday thank you. And I didn't want to spend it with my kids. Let's just keep it real on the Christy Wright Show. I love my kids. I see them 364 days a year for the most part.
Yeah.
We go to play dates, we go to the park, we go to the picnic, we go to the playground, we go to all the things. I am a good mom. Yesterday, wanted it to be about me. Wanted to get a pedicure, wanted to go to yoga, wanted to have lunch. I just wanted to be free. But Stephanie, I swear as I sit here today, I felt guilty.
No.
But I mean, it's like there was this like, you should want to be with them. You should want to be, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's like, so it's this constant work we have to do. I bring that up to say it's the constant work we have to do. If you're a mom of 8 months old or 6 years old or 16 years old and you feel that pull towards guilt, this is constant work we have to do to check that voice, to say, where did this story come from? Is this how God talks to me? No.
Right.
Is this true? No. You know, and so I hope that is just encouraging to women in any stage of life, that if you're feeling it, doesn't mean there's something wrong with you, but it does mean there's work yet to be done, as we all have to do, because I don't think God has called us to live a guilt-filled life. He didn't create us for that.
And the thing is, it steals from us.
Yes.
You know, like you absolutely are allowed to have a day, especially your birthday.
I know this. I teach this. I know.
And guilt, get out of here. This is my day. You know?
Right.
I think, this is something I'm totally still exploring, because obviously I'm very, very new at this. But like the idea that what if, I don't know who says this, but like there's kind of this idea that the best thing for my kids is to be around me 100% of the time.
That is a lie.
Right.
That is not true for them or for me.
Right, exactly. And it's like, I don't know where that comes from or why I sort of believed that, because no one ever told me that. But that's what I was feeling when I was like, okay, is it okay for me to, like, in my head, I'm like shipping them off to their grandparents. Like, okay, let's rephrase that. Is it okay for me to have a day where I get to do my job, and for them to have a day where they get to play with their incredible, loving grandparents? Like,
their grandparents are getting time with them.
Yes. All around, it's a win for their grandparents. It's a win for the girls. It's a win for me. What in the world makes me think that them being home with me while I'm trying to like write emails and like field phone calls and like make sure they're okay? What makes me think that that's actually a better scenario for them? And it's just a weird mental shift that I've been, slowly trying to do, that I think I'll be doing forever, that it's actually not best for them to be with me 100% of the time.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the thing that I think sometimes we're fighting.
Yes.
That is what best case scenario is.
Yeah. And there's such a pressure. There's such an outside pressure, I think, that comes from that, even if it's implicit through social media. We see this is how these moms are doing it, or this is what, I saw something on Instagram a long time ago, and I can't remember who posted it, but it was the quote, "We expect women to work like they don't have children and raise children like they don't work." Yeah. I'm like, that is the truth.
Yeah.
And because we feel that pressure, then because we can't do that, work like we don't have children, raise children like we don't work, then that's where I think some of this narrative spins up of we're failing.
Yeah.
And you're not failing. Yeah. And they're not failing and I'm not failing. But I think that pressure is that if we're going to swim upstream, if we're going to swim up current with this, like the guilt, the voice of the enemy, the pressure from social media, the stories that we get in our head, we're going to have to work hard at it, intentionally at it, to fight against that, to step into the freedom that we have in Christ, the freedom that we have as a mom that is enough, whatever that looks like for you, with your childcare, with your work, with your help. And, Stephanie, I know that through your podcast, through your books, you love spreading this hope. You love giving people permission, giving them hope, giving them encouragement and freedom, reminding them of that freedom. Talk a little bit about, because specifically the newest one, the Between Places, talk specifically about this and your heart behind this, because I know that hope and that light and that permission comes through in these pages. Talk a little bit about your heart behind this as an example of that, because I know you love to do this.
I really do. I think, if I can help anyone know that they're not alone and that they don't have to go through whatever they're going through alone, like, done. That's done.
Yeah.
And so, I wrote the Between Places when I was going through IVF. It took us a really, really long time to get pregnant with our girls, and we tried like truly everything. And so I actually wrote the majority of the book when we were 6 weeks from finding out if this was going to work.
When you didn't know.
Didn't know. And, as I sat down to write it, I was looking back and realizing that there were so many moments in my life where there were so many between places.
Yes.
Losing jobs, moving to a new place, like my total vision for my life just kind of disappearing all at once and getting, shot off in a different direction. There were so many, singleness. Like there's so many times in life where we're like, God, what are you doing? Like what is coming next? And we have to figure out how to be present in the present, trust him with the future. And the whole thing is just really hard.
Yeah.
And so that's why I wrote the Between Places. And it's 100 days to trusting God when you don't know what's next. And for me, really, I had no idea what my story was going to be like. And it's crazy to know that a year ago, I had no idea. It's just amazing what can happen in a year.
Yes.
And so that's what the book is all about. In the book, I go through the different kind of phases I go through mentally and spiritually and emotionally when I'm going through a between place.
Yeah.
And it's like really digging into the future and really, what does it look like to actually hand it over to God? And what does patience and presence actually mean and actually look like played out? But then also there's a piece to it where we need to be proactive about our future also.
Right.
So kind of how do you hold those two things? And that's what I walk women through in the Between Places. And it's just such a tender book for me because I've walked around this mountain a lot of times. And that was, the most recent time was I have no idea what's next, but this is the process I'm going through to trust God in the midst of it.
Yeah.
And, I'd love for you to come along with me.
Yeah. I love that. Even the title, The Between Places, is so powerful. Every Easter, when Easter rolls around, my favorite day, which is so weird, but my favorite day of the Easter holiday is Saturday. And we talk about the cross and we talk about the resurrection, but I just can't imagine how those people felt on Saturday of he is dead. He is gone. I thought he said. I thought he did. I thought he was the Messiah. I thought he said that he was going to conquer death, but he's dead. And he's the doubt, the fear, the God, what are you doing? That everything you thought was one thing is not that thing. And then just the reminder that the story isn't over. It's a Saturday. Sunday's coming. But we live in Saturdays in our life all the time. I love the heart behind this because you're helping people on the Saturdays. You're helping people in the unknown. You're helping people when thought he said this, but he seems to be doing this. One of the things I'm so guilty of, Stephanie, is I've noticed that when God makes a promise in my life, some type of, I feel like he's calling me to this or leading me to this, and it feels like it goes in a different direction. I catch myself. I notice that I was actually worshiping the promise, not the promiser. And I just love this reminder that you bring us back to God. You bring us back to who he is, that he is good in the between places. And regardless of what's on the other side of that, whether, like you said, when you wrote this, you didn't know how it was going to turn out. And now you have two beautiful girls. If it hadn't turned out that way, God is still good. And what does it look like to trust him in a new stage in your story as you worship the promiser, not the promise or what you feel like he's doing? Steffi, you have such a heart for helping everybody, but especially women. Tell people where they can get the Between Places and find out about your other books and your show and all the things that you're up to.
Yes. So my website is stephaniemaywilson.com. And that's just kind of the hub for everything.
Yes.
And then actually I have a promo code for you guys, for your listeners and viewers. So if you use the code Christy, it'll give you 25% off the Between Places.
And listen, don't spell it wrong. Christy. Y'all watch this show. Surely it can be spelled a lot of ways, but get it right. So you get the code, you get the discount. Stephanie, you're such a light. And I know you had to leave those baby girls to come be here today, but thank you for doing it. Thank you for spending time with us. Thank you for encouraging us that balance can look different every season. And even if you're tired, you can get through this. And just reminding us of God's goodness in the between places and how we can trust him. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
All right, y'all, I'm going to answer some of the questions that you sent in on social media. Let's see what we've got today. How do you stay in a relationship when it's hard to know that you are loved? This is a deep question. I think that which relationship it is matters, if that makes sense. Not that it changes the answer, but I think how I experience love from my mom or my dad is very different than how I experience love from my spouse, for example. But let me just give you, off the top of my head, some ideas. One way to process this, I'm assuming the implication here is you don't know you're loved. One way is to get to know the other person. And that may seem obvious, like I'm married to the person, hypothetically. I know them. But I mean, really know them? I mean, really understand their personality style, their love language, how they communicate, why they communicate the way that they do, because there's always layers to what's going on in a relationship. The assumption here is that you are loved. I hope that's the assumption. I hope you are loved. And that's not the actual issue, but it's hard for you to know it. It's hard for you to experience it. And I'll tell you, I've been transparent about this before. I've been in those shoes. I have sometimes found it hard to perceive love from my husband simply because he shows it different than I do. That's the reason the 5 Love Languages was such a successful book and Bible study, because we all have different love languages and we understand love in different ways. So I would say one of the very first practical things you can do is really get to know that other person. A practical thing I've used is studying the Enneagram, understanding that my husband is a 5-wing 6, and here's what that means. So when he does this, it means this. And I'm an 8-wing 7, so when I do this, it means this. And as we understand how we're wired and we understand even our childhood and our family dynamics that we grew up in, the households we grew up in, it helps me understand him. When I understand him, I can see how he shows love in a more accurate way. So I think the first practical thing that you can do is get to know that person, assuming it's a spouse, if not, a parent, maybe understanding how they're wired. The second thing that you can do, and I've been talking about this on the show a lot recently, but get help, meaning go to a counselor, read a book together, a marriage book together, read a relationship or communication book together. Getting outside help can so often shine light into areas that you both just feel stuck. Matt and I have so many times been stuck on a decision or in some type of conflict or something where we're just missing each other, and we're trying, we're talking about it, we're praying about it, we're doing all the things we feel like we should do, but we just miss each other. And when you bring a third party in, whether that's a counselor or even a book that can help, spur some conversations, listen to a podcast, whatever, it can help bring you guys onto the same playing field where you're speaking the same language. You can see eye to eye. You can actually communicate in a way that connects. So I think another practical thing you can do is just get outside help to help you be able to understand that love and receive it, that it's there. And the third thing, I'm just going to throw this in there because this has been some of my story, but pray about it. Really pray about it. Pray about what is yours to own. Do you have stories from your childhood? Do you have wounds? Do you have a narrative in your mind that you're not loved? That's actually something that needs to be healed in you, and it's not on that other person. I've been there. I've shared the story before of being in church when I felt like the Lord spoke to me that I was believing the lie that my husband didn't love me. And y'all, it was like the air was sucked out of my lungs because I realized that was a lie that I had been believing. My husband loves me so much, but it doesn't matter if he loves me if I don't believe it, because I'm going to experience what I believe. If I believe he doesn't love me, then every single thing that he does, I'm going to perceive as a lack of love. Anything that he does where he doesn't respond how I want him to or how I'm expect him to or how I would, I perceive that as a lack of love. He loves me very much, but it doesn't matter if I don't believe it. So I would say through prayer, I believe God can open your eyes to your own wounds, your own stories. Counseling can do that as well, but your own wounds and stories that need healing, that God needs to bring truth and light into, that's going to set you free to experience the love that you're seeking that maybe you're missing because of something going on in you. But at the same time, that prayer can also bring you together. I believe God can transform lives and God can reach that person, whether it's a parent, a child, a spouse, whoever that is that you're not feeling loved by. I believe prayer can transform that. Through the power of the Holy Spirit, God can touch that person's heart. He can prompt them. He can move them. He can convict them. He can spur them. He can change them. He can move them to act. And I think prayer can solve both. I think prayer can bring light and truth and healing to you where you may or may not need it, and can also bring that conviction to that other person. I hope that helps. I'm sorry that you're not feeling loved. I really believe that you are. And I hope you are. And I hope that this helps you move in the direction to be able to experience it and feel it. But I do want to make sure that I say before we wrap up today that whether or not you are loved by this person, you are loved by the God of the universe. He created you and he adores you. He does not put up with you. He delights in you. He's captivated by you. And I want to make sure you know that. It's going to be the only one we answer today. I think that's a good one to end on. Thank y'all so much for joining me. As always, I love hanging out with you. And of course, for more encouragement on becoming the person you want to be, you can visit ChristyWright.com.
Thanks for listening. More episodes and shows like this are available to you at accessmore.com. And if you're able to give right now, there's an added bonus. You'll be eligible to win a major tech upgrade. The perfect prize to help you enjoy the entire library of shows at Access More. You're so needed to help continue important conversations about faith and life on Access More. So let's do this together at accessmore.com and click donate. That's accessmore.com and then click donate.